Hi friends, welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. I'm Kenzie, and today I'll be reading stories from the subreddit Let's Not Meet. This first story comes from user Alamulazone. Never that safe. Okay, this happened in 2016 when I was a 17-year-old first-year college student in film school. I'm now 22, female, name is Julia. I lived alone in my first ever apartment. It was really small, but I was really proud of my independence. I never felt unsafe in this apartment for several reasons. There were multiple gates in the residence that needed to be opened through a code that only the people who lived there knew. My door had 3 different locks, and it was right next to the university, so most people who lived in the neighborhood were college students. Nothing bad had ever happened in the neighborhood before. I've always been very careful with locking the door when I leave my home. I always check twice, I have slight OCD. So this one time, I leave to go to class and lock my door, but for some reason I couldn't get the key out of the lock. It was completely stuck, so I went to get the caretaker of the building to help me, but he wasn't there, and I was getting late for class, so I went to class with the key still in the lock. I took the keychain off first so it's not too noticeable. When I got home, the caretaker was back, so he came to help me, and we couldn't get it out for 15 minutes until he somehow did. He told me the lock was damaged, but that I didn't necessarily need to change it if I only locked it once instead of twice. I just said okay, and that was the end of it. I really wasn't worried because of how safe I felt in this building. Flash forward to 2 months later. I was taking out the trash one night around 11 p.m. while on the phone with my sister. I remember telling her that I was taking out the trash, then that I would take a shower afterwards before heading to a party. As I previously said, I always lock the door, even just taking out the trash. Because of my lock being damaged, I only locked it once. When I get back to my apartment, I found the door unlocked, which immediately alarmed me. So I went into the apartment and locked the door immediately with 3 different types of locks. When you walk into my apartment, which is just 215 square feet, you have the main room in front of you and the bathroom door immediately to your left. I had left the bathroom door slightly open, enough so I could see a man in my shower turning his back to me. Naturally, when I saw this, I tried to open the door and leave as fast as possible, except my main lock was damaged from 2 months earlier and I couldn't get it open no matter how hard I tried. In this moment, all I could think of was the fact that I had to leave as fast as possible. I jumped out the window without really thinking. I figured it was the only solution, except I lived on the 2nd floor, so I completely smashed my ankles in the landing. I started running in whichever way I could, and when I got a little further from the building, I looked back and a man was there at my window watching me running away. I thought of 2 possible outcomes. Either the man was going to jump and chase me, except I wouldn't get far with my twisted ankles, or he would get scared of the height and be locked in my apartment. Thankfully, he picked option 2. I went to hide in a bush a little further and called the police, who arrived in just 10 minutes because I lived close to the station. They pushed my door open, and the man was there just sitting on my couch, holding a kitchen knife, waiting for me to come back, like he didn't think I would call the police. They arrested the guy and later told me he had already been arrested for sexual assault, rape, attempted kidnapping, and attempted murder. They also told me how everything had happened. Like I said, it was a very friendly neighborhood with mostly college students, so he got inside the building by other people holding the door for him. He then heard me tell my sister I was going to take a shower, which was why he was waiting in the bathroom for me. He crocheted my lock while I was taking out the trash. He apparently noticed me on school campus and followed me to my home several times before succeeding to actually come in. He stayed inside waiting for me because I had recently changed my phone and the previous one was still on the table, so he thought I didn't have a phone with me to call the police. I don't live there anymore, but after that, to get into the building, we all needed identification proving we lived there. Building IDs were created, and we had to scan them every time, and it was the only way to get inside the building. Nothing bad happened in the neighborhood after that. It's back to being very peaceful and friendly. This story comes from user Cashew6669X. Threatened in a parking lot. As I'm writing this, it's been a few hours since this happened to me and my friends. Still a bit shaken, but hopefully writing this helps me calm down a bit. For a bit of background, I am currently 19 years old and live in Canada. Being a young Métis male with long hair and some discernibly native features, I've grown used to the occasional needlessly hostile cop or security guard. It's just a part of my life. However, most of the time those encounters don't escalate very far and have always happened in some other part of the city, so I never thought something like this would happen. It was a little after 1 a.m. and I was hanging out with 2 of my friends, Joey and Rick. We were hanging out at my house initially, however my parents had gone to bed and we didn't want to wake them up, so we decided to go out for a drive. We ended up going out to our old high school and chilled in the parking lot while listening to music. It's a relatively safe and well-lit area, so we didn't reckon anything bad would happen. While there, we joined a Discord call with some of our friends who were out of town for university, having a good time when I noticed a big white pickup truck pull into the parking lot. Right off the bat, I knew something was wrong. Most people that come into these parking lots to hang out are around our age, and not many teenagers drive a truck this nice or big. I tap Joey on the shoulder and tell him that we should leave. Before he had time to react, the truck pulls up right behind our car and blocks us in. Inside was a relatively normal-looking white guy, maybe about 30, with some stubble and a Hurley hat on. We see him roll down his window and gesture for us to roll ours down too. Not knowing what else to do, Joey complied. The guy then pulled up on our driver's side and identified himself as a cop who just finished his shift and wanted to know what we were doing out this late. Joey explained we were just hanging out listening to music. The guy nodded and he said he just wanted to make sure we weren't doing anything bad, then he drove off. After that, all went back to normal. We didn't think much of it and were relieved that it wasn't anything worse. Joey joined the Discord call again and all was normal. Then maybe 10 minutes later, I realized this guy has been driving back and forth down the street near the parking lot watching us. Suddenly, he comes flying into the parking lot, turning on his high beams as he slams on the brakes maybe 2 stalls away from where we're parked on our driver's side. Afterwards, he proceeded to park at an angle, partially blocking us in, then rolling down his window, visibly very angry as he starts yelling at us. My initial reaction was to start filming, but unfortunately my phone had died a few minutes prior. Never let your phone go below 10% when in public. If something happens, you'll be glad you'll have it on you. Joey rolls down his window. As he does this, we heard the guy yell, "You guys have to leave. Get the F out of here right now." Joey nods and said something along the lines of, "All good. Can I see your badge?" The man exhaled loudly before reaching down, pulling out his badge and gun, which was pointed right at Joey. Thankfully, he set both items down right after, but it was clearly another blatant attempt at intimidation. In hindsight, we probably should have asked for his badge number, but the sight of a firearm had us frozen. After this, he went back on his tirade, yelling something along the lines of, "Get the F out of here before I call my on-duty friends and come F you guys up." So we tell him we'll leave. Before he goes flying off, he yells something along the lines of, "Don't be dumbasses. Quit doing crappy things like this." Needless to say, we ended up leaving after that. We just ended up going back to Joey's house and cooling off a bit before he drove me and Rick home. This is the first time I've had an incident with a cop/security where I genuinely felt as though I was in danger. It's also worth noting that unless otherwise posted, this parking lot is designated as free for public use outside of school hours, and we didn't have the music very loud either, so we had no real reason to ask us to leave in the first place. I am unsure of whether or not I will be filing a complaint. Would very much like to do one both to get even and ensure he's unable to do something like this again. However, there is no anonymous way to file a complaint on an officer in my city, and I know that a complaint would escalate the situation into some god-awful legal case, and it may be for the best to simply take the lesson from this situation and move on. This next story comes from user PowerPackM. A man tried a ding-dong ditch to get me to open the door and presumably rob me. This happened about 10 years ago. I've been in this subreddit for a while, and I only just remembered that this happened to me and is a relevant story. So at this time, I'm 14, male, and I'm enrolled in high school. My mom worked at a nearby apartment complex as a manager, so she'd pick me up from school at 2:40 and bring me home instead of riding the bus for hours. The day is completely normal so far. She picks me up from school and brings me home. Not more than 10 minutes after I'm home, a black car pulls up into the driveway, and I hear a hard knock on the door. I look through the glass on the front door, and I can clearly see a man wearing a hoodie in the summer laying on the ground in front of my door. I guess he assumed he was completely obscured because my mom had a wreath on the door, and the space between the window and the bottom of the door was wide enough that someone could probably assume I couldn't see them. Well, I saw him. I ran and grabbed the house phone and called the police from the kitchen where I could see the car. I had a machete. Teenager me thought that swords and stuff were cool, don't judge me, and waited around the corner of the door while still on the phone with the police. At this point, the man knocks again, so I took matters into my own hands. I yell as loud as I can, "Leave now or I'll effing kill you." I had a pretty deep voice for my age, thank you early puberty, so I guess he thought I was a full-grown man, because this man got up and hauled ass like an Olympic sprinter, LMAO. So about 3 minutes or so pass and the police get to my house. We had no cameras or anything, so there's really nothing to go off of to pursue this person. The cops pretty much just tell me that I handled the situation well and the law's about self-defense. The man never returns, and that's the end of my story. This next story comes from user perfect1+9. Followed. I worked at a law firm in a fairly large US city. I lived 1 block from work and therefore walked every day. About half a mile in the other direction was a restaurant I really loved. One evening, after a crappy day, I decided to go get dinner before going home. I went to the restaurant, had dinner, and started the walk home. It was dusk at this point, but there was still plenty of light. The street was deserted except for a single car traveling in the opposite direction. The car suddenly slammed on its brakes, and I was so surprised I stopped walking. I expected it to be someone asking for directions or something, but instead it was just 2 guys staring at me. The driver was literally hanging out the window and licking his lips. I very deliberately rolled my eyes and kept walking. I had walked most of the way back to my office when I got a weird feeling, like someone was watching me. I looked over my shoulder, and the same car was there, a couple feet behind me. They had flipped a U-turn, cut their engine, and coasted down the street behind me. The passenger was closer to me now, and he was leaning a little out of the window, making gross faces at me. I didn't think, I just started running. I heard the car start up and follow me. I was close to home, but I didn't want to lead the guys to where I lived. I ran down the rest of the street and through an intersection. I made it to the parking structure for my office building, which has an entrance into the building itself, with security in the lobby. I hung out in the lobby with the security guy and checked outside again and again until I was sure the car wasn't hanging around. Then I ran the 1 block home. I think about those guys every time I walk alone now. And that's all the stories I have for today. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe so you know when I post next. Put your Let's Not Meet stories in the comments and I'll possibly read them in a video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!